or your self-checkout with the scanner, there was a blue wooden box. Yeah. Looked not extremely techy. And the checking out your goods was basically starting off, then putting item by item into that box.
All right. And no streckcodes.
No barcode. No barcode scanning, and no RFID chips or anything like that. It was basically just looking at what kind of product is this. And then I put stuff in one by one. It nailed each one. Really? And then just check out, blip your phone, and then you're done. And it was such an easy experience from left to right, basically, that I felt the machine learning and the AI and computer vision, in this case, really entered everyday life without being that whole insights and person in the loop and so on, and really just becoming an easy part of your life.
It's nice to see some companies are starting to catch up with Amazon as well, and the big tech giants that we have in the world. Have you heard about these Amazon Go stores that they have?
Yeah, and I think that's a bit of that is what I had expected when computer vision came in checkout.
Right.
When it came to Sweden, was the big tech thing. Now we're going to do a computer vision store and so on. It just becomes a tech brag project.
Yeah.
This was completely, I mean, there were no signs or anything. It was just a checkout, a blue wooden box to put stuff in.
So it was the next generation POS, point of sale systems, the way it should be.
Yes.
And the experience is quite seamless. It's convenient, and all this that is sort of all of a sudden ML in everyday life.
Yeah.
And I think another key topic here is it's not a project that has anything to do with analytics. It's hardcore operational, like part of the checkout process.
Yeah, definitely. Really close to the customer, not someone getting brilliant insights to act upon, but rather just a part of the operational business process.
And do you remember when this was? You said it like a couple of weeks ago. So it's just and which one was it?
It was the one in Mall of Scandinavia.
That one.
And
I need to go there.
I have no idea how long they've had it, because I've been cooped up in my house for a year now. So,
all right, very cool topic to start getting to know each other. But let's go into the real introduction of our guest today, Olof Granberg. Data analytics, head of data analytics in ICA.
Yeah.
So, let's start there. Who is Olof Granberg?
Olof Granberg, I am the head of data analytics at ICA Group. So I support all of our companies, ICA Bank, ICA Sweden, Apotek Hjärtat, Rimi in the Baltics, and so on. And what I do there is basically lead our data engineering and our common platforms for analytics. I come from quite a long developer and architect background. I started off as a mobile engineer. I was tailored to work at Ericsson, and I have never worked with cell phones in my life, but because you know what happened to Ericsson back in the 2000s. It did not go great. But I quite early in my career fell into analytics, I would say. Being a consultant at a big firm, you kind of get assigned to stuff. And I got assigned to a few things until I ended up in a data warehouse replacement project. And that was where I started to really feel that what I did mattered, and that I felt that this is where I'm supposed to be, working with data, bringing data into the business, seeing what the business needs to understand and know.
And just to unpack what you just said, so data warehouse, what do you mean with that? A lot of people have different opinions on what that really means, but can you just, in that specific case, what did it mean?
In this specific, and this is 16 years ago, so it was a proper old school Ralph Kimball dimensional model warehouse, yes, with all of the trimmings.
What tech? You have to ask. 2016. This is fun.
So 2006, it was actually DB2 database and data
IBM?
stage.
IBM?
Yes, IBM.
Yeah.
IBM DB2 data stage. It was MicroStrategy as a reporting tool.
Interesting.
And so it was proper old school data warehousing. And
but you had like star schemas and fact tables and these kind of things.
yes, so all of the dimensional modeling, surrogate keys. The classical Kimball methodology. And I actually haven't left the analytics space since. But the analytics space has of course evolved. I mean, I worked as a consultant for a number of years before I joined ICA Sweden back in 2010, and worked there for a number of years within that analytics space. And what really changed, so I would say up until and at the time I worked at ICA Sweden, I kind of dug deeper and deeper into that whole analytics, more classical analytics, and seeing how you can benefit or help the business using that. But that changed.
How do you define classical analytics then? What does that mean?
So then,
I think it's a topic in its own.
Yeah, but still, I think you could just give a quick introduction.
Yeah, the quick one for me is the data warehouse where you ETL the data in. On top of that, you build some form of dashboard and insights. They can be IT built or self-service, but it's still that kind of getting the data in, cleaning it, making it step by step, knowing exactly what you want to do before you start working.
And for BI purposes, so to speak.
Yeah, BI. Some
reporting tools or self-service tools comes.
I mean, it can
here.
be some visualization tools like Tableau or Click or and things like that as well. But the majority of the data comes from an extremely clean model. You've done a lot of prep on the data before.
Many layers.
Many layers, so I mean, you normally end up with data that has a very good quality. You know a lot about data. However, the pace around that implementation is not very fast. I mean, since there are so many steps, there are so many things you need to sort out on the way. That takes. And then when.
Good.
But for me, that really changed back in 2015 when I joined Telia on their whole data lake, what was at the time referred to big data journey. Thankfully, we've gotten away from that big data term and just talk data nowadays.
But you mentioned a new term. Perhaps a quick introduction to that as well. So data lake in Telia's case, what did that mean at that time?
So data lake at the time was using the Hadoop stack to bring in really massive amounts of data and then process that, build insights. In that case, we built a lot of machine learning models and created insights and products with that.
Was this the time where you were working with Fredrik Buckner and
Yes.
a couple of other guys?
Yeah. So Fredrik Buckner, Magnus Dahlbäck, Niklas Cederberg,
Yes.
Johan Wallin.
And what was the journey? So you left. So you were in ICA, and then you left and went to Telia for a while.
Yeah, and that was when data lakes and Hadoop and those things had become not exactly mainstream, but at least a common topic in a lot of the larger companies in Sweden.
So not early adopters, but early majority, maybe something like this.
Something like that. So it wasn't cutting edge, but it was still the things that you could do with it was really pushing the needle. And a lot of things that have really changed who I am today professionally came from that period. because we went from that whole classical structuring everything really well into more of a prototyping, having that very, very iterative mindset, working with getting data dumps into the data lake, working with the data, and then finding out exactly how you wanted to build your analytical models, what data you need, exactly how you want the data, and so on. Then going back and building the production-ready data pipelines with all of the error checking and so on.
So this is because we are talking about that you experience a new tech stack to some degree, but you're also highlighting here going to more hypothesis-driven methods, going to more agile, iterative methods.
Yeah, definitely.
So would you argue that when you've been working in the data warehouse space, the early days, it was more traditional planned, well-planned project management, sort of waterfall, and then with these new technologies, but that's not the only part of this paradigm shift, it's also the hypothesis-driven approach.
Yeah.
Would that be?
Absolutely. And I think that also came, the technology came with possibilities to work
like this,
with sandboxes, with isolated environments. Even though you were on-prem, you got some of the things you get from a cloud stack today. At least not as easy or as smooth, but you could build some of those concepts easier on that tech stack. And you don't have to think of everything as being perfect to go into production. You can rather put things more isolated, and then really try things out, learn, go back, redo it, learn, go back, redo it, and so on.
And at this early time, which I think it still is for the early majority around big data and data lakes, what was the use cases that you were working on, or was it a lot of data, or was it analytics, machine learning as well, or what was it that you were using the data lake for?
I think from the start it was very explorative. Utilizing data that was so large that they hadn't been able to work with it before. Things like network events and things like that create a lot of data. And being able to work with those amounts of data, you cannot do that in the older stacks that was used before Hadoop became mainstream. And now we have completely different stacks, but at the time. So first of all, very explorative, and then quite quickly into the machine learning, building those kind of models to do more, create operational insights, create recommendations on what to do in the.
So was this in the Telia times, or when you actually came back to it?
This was still in the Telia times.
Okay. And you still had on-premise clusters then, or did you?
Yes. Yeah.
Right. Can you give some example for some machine learning project that you can just mention that you are especially, or you see extra interesting in some way?
Well, now I just have to think about what
this is.
You're always back in this was my old employer and so on. But so I think that Telia has done a lot of interesting things within the analytics space. One of the projects that is that has been in the news that.
It's perfectly fine to say you can't speak about every product, of course.
Yeah,
but I understand that. But if you have some
I was involved in the early days because this was in the news just recently during the pandemic. Christopher Ågren from Telia has been in the news several times talking about crowd insights, and where they helped Folkhälsomyndigheten just look at how people are moving, how that has shifted during the pandemic back and forth from being extreme people before moving around a lot to moving very little, and then that going in waves. And that kind of product you could build. I think this was the first time that you could actually build those kind of
So you had something, products. I mean, like Christopher Ogren has done this even into a commercial service today with the Tela Division X.
Yeah.
But you had the first steps to be able to do that and understand that on internal basis in Telia was taken around 2015, I guess. That's what you're saying, or 16, or
yeah. Well, at least during the time I was there. But I mean, we were working on the data underneath and so on quite a bit. And
yeah. Continue.
And then 3 years ago, almost exactly, I rejoined ICA. Not on ICA Sweden, but rather on ICA Group.
And what was that story? How did that happen?
Well, it actually happened that one of my old friends from the ICA time actually called me up and said, "No, there is actually a better story behind this, because I was in the market for a new camera." And I was surfing Blocket for, I knew what camera I wanted. So I was surfing Blocket for used cameras.
I'm a small camera nerd. So
okay, so it was a Canon 5D Mark III.
Full frame. Yeah.
Full frame. So I was in the market for that. And all of a sudden, one of the listings on Blocket pops up, and I recognize the seller's name.
Yeah, an old colleague.
So I call him up and say, "Hi, you're selling a camera." He was like, "Yes." And then I was like, "Yeah, let me buy it." And "Yeah, fine, come over." And then when I was over and looking at the camera and all of the stuff that came with it, we started talking about what's happening at ICA and what they were doing. And we kind of got in, okay, that's an interesting discussion. How would you take that data-driven transformation that, well, at the time it was a lot around, also there around big data, machine learning. How would you take that, make it more mainstream, and really put that into the business? And the further we got into that discussion, the more interesting it became. And then that discussion at his house became a discussion at ICA together with my current manager. And here we are.
And how would you say the main difference is to work at group level today versus when you were in ICA Sweden?
I would say it's a bit of a shift on who I see, who I support. So in many ways, I would say we work in a spectrum of what we actually offer. So for some of our opcos, some of our companies, we do actually do the delivery for them. So we build use cases, and we build the data pipelines and so on. Then we are quite close to the business and helping the business out. In other cases, we are supporting the analytics teams out at the companies. And then we have a different mindset on the level that when they succeed, we succeed. So our job is basically helping them do their job. So when they can build their data pipelines, when they can build their models as easy as possible, then we've done our job right.
So does that mean that you, for one, share like competence, or people can go out and help them? Does it also mean that you share the infrastructure, or what does it mean? Or how does the group level kind of organization support the different?
So we help them out in a few different ways. In some sense, yes. I mean, if they want us to come out and build and help out with actually building things, then definitely. But we also help them with supplying them with platforms, how to work with the platforms, support around it. So we try to create group-wide platforms that everyone can use, so that when we add things, when we make improvements, everyone gets the same improvement.
Oh, we can go down a rabbit hole here.
Yes.
I mean, like, maybe we should do it. I mean, like, I think like this. Before we go into the rabbit holes on architecture and platform, and even talking about data mesh and topics like this, would be very curious to understand how you are organized. Group level towards the different ones. You were coming into this topic now, but then it's quite interesting to understand how you have looked at sort of organization, responsibilities, mandates, in order to do your job in the best possible way, the way you described it.
And I think that and this is where we need to come back to that whole spectra thing.
Yes. Okay, I will take that. We take that question soon.
Yeah, but we have I would say fairly classical organization where we have divided between business and IT. Mm-hmm. On the IT side, we have the engineering, be it data engineering and platform engineering. And on the business side, we have the analytics people with data scientists and analysts and so on. You can always have viewpoints. Is this the most optimal way to do it? Shouldn't people sit in the same organization? But for us, it's most important that people work together, not who they report to. So we form virtual teams, and when we pick up a case, we have people working together, data scientists, data engineer, the platform engineers when they're needed, and so on. And
is this specifically within the ICA group, or is it you're meaning completely in the whole organization as a whole, so to speak?
I would say, but it differs between the different companies. But on the ICA group level, that's how we are working.
Yeah. Okay.
And
the difference, has that got to do with the maturity of the different parts of the organization mainly, or it has to do with the type of use cases they have, or?
I would say size and maturity.
Maturity.
How long they've worked, been doing their data-driven journey
themselves,
and also the size of organization. At some point, you need a critical mass in order to have a data engineering and a data science team. We do a lot of work with our real estate company, and the organizational-wise, they're not big. They're doing a lot of things with very few people, and which means that it doesn't really make sense for them to have a full data engineering teams themselves. It's easier for them to come to us.
But I think this is important now, because we're talking about how to organize, what needs to be central, what needs to be local or embedded. We can call it hub and spoke. We can call it many things. But you also mentioned something very important here, which I think is you use the word virtual organization. So it's not so easy to draw the perfect organizational map. You need to have different approaches depending on exactly this, what is, cost relevant, size, maturity. So the many things that is sort of situational that you need to play into. Would you, I'm trying to summarize and put my own spin on this.
Yeah, and I very much agree with that. Is doing an organizational change takes a lot of time. It takes a lot of change, both from the people working. If you as a person get reorganized, all of a sudden you have a new manager, you belong to a new organization. That takes a lot of time and effort. There are a lot of legal stuff you have to go through, and so on. When you work with virtual teams, you're not really changing managers, you're not changing who you're reporting to, but you have a lot of better agility on finding out how you actually want to work.
Would you say virtual team is a core part of how ICA works, that mindset, or is it something that comes with your territory?
I think it comes with, in some sense, it comes with ICA. We have, I would say yes and no. It's not a core part. We don't have the same model exactly everywhere.
But just elaborate a bit more. What is really a virtual team? Does it mean that it's much more dynamic in terms of time and people that can work with it? Or how would you define a virtual team compared to the normal kind of organization you have otherwise?
So, just to take a practical example. say that we run 3 different use cases at the same time, that all use at least one data scientist, at least one data engineer, and some business people. The business people are normally allocated to that particular use case, probably not full time. It's always hard to get business people full time. So they are divided by each team. For the other teams, normally, ideally, you could just form that team, work full time for a number of weeks, and then you're done. You can just move on to the next use case. In practicality, that's seldom the case. And I think this is a very different if you work on a standalone product somewhere where you're in control of the whole end-to-end. But when you work within analytics, it's very often that you have 4, 5, 6 data sources, and then you're dependent on their planning. If you're using centralized integration engines, you're depending on that planning. When it comes to you're actually building your analytics and your machine learning models, and then the output is supposed to go into an executing system, then you're dependent on that development. That in reality, and we haven't even gone into the whole data governance, data protection things you need to take into consideration, where you need to find out what is the data we need, what are we going to do with the data, what are we allowed to do this with the data, are we following our data protection promise that we give to our customers, and so on and so on. All of this leads to that you're going to spend a lot of calendar time on building something, even though within the actual development team you could do it in a few sprints. But the whole setting up, doing the design, having all of the discussions back and forth, that all draws out in calendar time. So with that said, coming back to the virtual teams, then it's hard to fully, obviously depending on the size of the project you're doing, but it's hard to maybe fully dedicate a full team to each use case. That means that we normally have people working with several use cases at the same time, because you will get pauses, you will get things that take calendar time.
So virtual teams is about being able to be a little more flexible on when you have a heavy workload versus a light workload, and I also hear a little bit like the virtual team is pulling together the cross-functional capabilities just in time, depending. Now we need to really dig down into this data governance topic, privacy topic. Now it's the engineering stuff. So it's a little bit like use case life cycle oriented. Yeah, something like this. And then virtual, I also get it that big difference is that we are not organized under one boss, so to speak. So we are pulling in the data governance guy from one boss, we are pulling in data engineers from another line organization.
Correct. Okay. Correct. Yeah. And I mean, this is part of why we're organizing like that, is that we are supporting a very, very large organization. Mm-hmm. If you were at another company where you would have a larger mass of people working, then it's easier to allocate and build domain teams. Saying people that work with logistics, for instance. I mean, that's easier when you have the larger mass there. Yeah. But for us, we're quite a lean organization. We are supporting a lot of different business units.
And what are the pros and cons with what you're doing today? And are you looking towards domain or data value chain organization style, or are you feeling there are always pros and cons, right? So what's the pains and the positives with what you're doing now?
So the positive side is that we are supporting a lot of different business functions. Across multiple companies
with a lean company.
With quite a lean organization. The drawback, of course, is if you compare it to a domain team, as a domain team, you get to learn the data often quite well. You get to learn the business really well. Use cases. You have that whole history of and not forgetting building the whole team around it. We have really good collaboration between data engineers, data scientists, and so on. But when you bring the business people into it, it becomes a new team, and you need to form that. So that's obviously a good, a positive side when working with domain teams or value chain teams or however. But just having that static team is that you learn from each other, you can kind of deepen that relationship.
Can you just, you said a number of different types of teams now. So for one, you have, some kind of boss, perhaps you can call it a line reporting team or something. Yes. And then you have the virtual teams and you have domain teams. So if we speak about the domain team, is that basically where people are more of the same type of competence or skills together? Or can you just try to elaborate, what are the differences between these three teams?
So normally, so the different teams. First of all, you have like the organizational team, people reporting to one manager. Those are often competence based.
Yep. Similar type of skills.
Yeah, data engineers, data scientists, platform engineers, and so on. When it comes to the domain teams, that's more focused towards a business domain. So
business problem.
Business problem.
Or logistics is that what we mean with the domain? Business domain.
Yeah, business domain. So like you said, logistics, online,
so replenishment. Belongs to the reporting team. Can he also belong to a certain domain team then? And thirdly, to a virtual team as well? Or how does it work?
Well, for us, yes, it is a bit like that. So it's a bit that as a data engineer, you have one reporting manager.
Yeah.
And then when we run use cases, they belong to that use case team.
And then you have a sponsor who has the business need for something.
And the use case team is the virtual team, right?
Yeah, the use case team is the virtual team. And many times that virtual team can get recreated when something new pops up and so on.
Right.
Yeah, and my argument could be like sometimes then you get into one of the more mature organization where these use cases now has started to mature. So we actually have things in production, and that the virtual team starts stabilizing into a more stable domain team. So then this is a little bit like then maybe you have still your competence, discipline, ownership one way, but you have been more stable over time working with your virtual team until it becomes a sort of a solid domain team that I have a cross-functional team with data engineers and everyone, and now we are hardcore logistics fans or something like this. Is that something like this?
Yeah. And then for us, we normally mix quite, or rather for us, the number of use cases we're doing is so varied that it's hard to really solidify that kind of virtual team because we do so many different things.
But that kind of leads us, I mean, like there are many trajectories here. I'll give you a couple. I would love to explore the different use cases that ICA has because I can really understand a huge spectrum from customer to supply chain and logistics. This is one topic. The other topic is, of course, to go in and explore, what's your current tech stack and stuff like that. And then, of course, we had the whole topic of this holistic model, how this all fits together that I think you said, this is a pain, someone should get it done. But maybe we should start with the use cases because
one follow-up question before we move into that. So, you can do a lot of things at a company, and you mentioned a number of times like you have a number of pipelines that you need to build, and you have applications you need to build, and use cases to support in some way. Would you say how the virtual team, I guess, is more of a cross-functional team that tries to support it more and more end to end, or less or more to end to end? But how far does it go? For people building a pipeline, sometimes they have their own team to just, I'm only going to support having this pipeline running here and now, and then potentially have a number of consumers for that pipeline. How do you usually do it? Is the pipeline part of the virtual team, or is that separate?
So the pipeline is part of the virtual team.
Yeah.
We normally and you also have to look at it from during the initial implementation, putting things into production, and that you normally do during a number of times during the implementation of a use case. But then you also have to look at the afterlife. After now we're happy, now we're gonna go just reap the business benefits for a while until we come back and improve it.
So do you scale down the virtual team then to more have a DevOps kind of organization?
And I think that's one of the strengths we have, is that since we have that central competence team, when that use case scales down, the people return home, so to say, and then we have other use cases and so on.
Yeah. But you have use cases where we end up with a production pipeline or algorithms in production. So you need to continue then. Maybe even more developers, but then you need to scale it to maintenance and operations and improvement team, so to speak. Yeah.
But Norm, it's the same competence team.
Yes.
We do not everything we develop we run.
Yeah.
We don't hand anything.
No,
we don't hand anything off to someone else.
But it's the difference to really, you need to ramp it up to get it down on deadline, and then you end up on a stable level.
Yeah. I'm not like that. You actually do not hand it over to some other team that is handling the operation, but you actually do have the full ownership of that use case, right?
Yeah, I think it's good too. I think if you think about it, the more complex it gets, you build it, you run it.
Yes.
Yeah,
I agree.
Good.
All right. Let's go into the next topic that is sort of adjacent to this. We've used the word use cases anymore, but so what are the real problems that you're solving or that you're trying to work on? What is your key focus area that you think can make a huge impact for IKEA Gruppen?
So I think IKEA has IKEA has a vision to make every day a little easier for our customers.
Is that the formal mission of IKEA?
Varje dag lite enklare.
We actually have seen that.
So it's in Swedish, and I would roughly translate it to just every day a little bit easier.
Yeah, I love it. It's an awesome mission, I think.
And I agree. I think it is really good, and I think it sets a good priority for what should we do. It's not about maximizing profits, even though that's of course since we are a company, of course, that is an important. But
the customer-centric mission, what you think will drive customer excellence?
Yes, and really bring customer value. So it sets the belief that when our customers are happy and have an easy life, then they will be happy with us, and then they will stay with us. Yeah. So I think that is really what we want to fulfill. So we do things around the customer. We try to make their lives easier.
So the whole customer journey inside the store and etc. like this becomes.
It's very similar to Spotify. They put the user experience before anything else, before profit or whatnot, because they know in the long term that is really what will pay off. It's the same for you, right?
And what is the customer journey or customer experience in IKEA now? You have physical stores, you have digital stores, you have many different parts of it, of course.
And that makes it extremely interesting in my mind, because IKEA has been around for over 100 years and come from a brick and mortar store, extremely non-digital from the start. And just bringing that, first of all, that user experience online, being in a store where you feel welcome, where you feel like it's a personal store. One of IKEA's big strengths is that all of our store owners, they run their own business. They run their own store. They decide what to do in the store. And they pride themselves on getting to know their customers and working close to their customers. and trying to bring that feeling online.
Interesting.
That as a person, when I come in, it's not just I'm not shopping on just ICA.se. I mean, it is of course ICA.se, but then you're kind of you need to get that feeling that, well, I'm welcome. This is tailored to me. ICA knows who I am. They know what I want. They know what I want to have, and so on. So I think that user experience is extremely important. And for me, in my mind also, it's about simplifying. And when that comes to food shopping, for instance, for me, you can divide it into 2 parts. I love to go food shopping. My wife does not.
That's weird, or usually the opposite, or I don't know.
And I usually divide it into 2 parts. One is gray shopping, which is basic, all of the stuff that we always buy, we always need. You need
basics.
Yeah, you need the basics. You need bread, you need milk, you need that kind of stuff.
And that should be fast.
And that should be fast,
right?
Easy. The brand of milk I buy doesn't change. Not because I absolutely love a particular brand of milk. It's just I need milk. But then there are a number of things that I really enjoy shopping. Fruits and vegetables that are seasonal, where you can really see now for instance, now is apple season. So that's a lot of fun, going just browsing what kind of apples there are in the store and so on. And then buying meat, buying things like that are a bit more that
high
you really
interest.
feel. High interest things.
Yeah.
And what you then can bring into the user experience and make a customer's lives easier is that whole, okay, this is what you normally buy. Would you like to put that in a basket? Yes, please.
Yes. Now we're done.
Now we're done with that. Let's go come into the things that are fun.
Yeah.
So these are the new, this is what's seasonal right now. This is what's really good right now. Now we've gotten this, we've brought in this particular farm here in Uppland that has these cows and so on. So bringing that whole extra part that's fun with food.
So how do you do that? How do you make that experience easy? How do you make people find the low interest kind of goods in a quick and efficient way? And how do you make people find, high interest goods that are less common, so to speak?
And I think that's where the whole recommendations and those kind of things that are data driven and that are customer tailored comes in. Can
you speak about any specific recommender system that you are using today, or how it works, or from a more technical point of view, perhaps?
I'm not sure if I can. I mean, we have built our own, or that the team that builds the recommendations engine have built their own and have worked with it a long time and are getting, in my opinion, really good at it.
Do you know if it's more content based, or it's collaborative filtering based, or a hybrid of the two? Or
I don't know. Yeah. I'm not going to answer that.
Okay. Cool.
But trying to just getting that kind of content in an easy manner to the customers, and then of course getting back to the customer experience. You want to bring the nice parts about being in a store, which is you kind of see the product. You get that visual experience when you shop food. Bringing that to the customer, as well as the whole ease of being online, being able to search and sort and bring things that are that you would probably like to the forefront for the customer, and making just that whole easy.
And do you have any data or analytical operational use cases coming into the brick and mortar store? I mean, like we took the Decathlon example is quite cool, but I don't know how to do that.
But before we leave the recommender system, and that's
go for it.
Yeah. And of course, you need to collect data to be able to build a recommender system. whichever technique you are using. And then the technique can be, they clicked on something, they bought something, or it can be more, this is the product, or this is the image of it, or this is the text describing it, or whatnot. But it could also be like review-based, or so many things that you can use to try to understand what the user actually do like and do not like. But then you get also into some legal issues sometimes, and GDPR kind of issues, and etc. Can you mention anything about, how do you handle GDPR and data that is collected about users in ICA?
So for us, we took the whole GDPR thing quite seriously, and have worked extensively with it. When we come to recommendations and so on, we work with only of our customers that have chosen to identify themselves.
Right.
So we're not we're not working with customers that basically haven't opted in quite explicitly.
So how many have really opted in?
So
percentage-wise, you would say.
It's been so many years since I heard that figure, but so I don't
5% or 95%?
No. It's towards the high end.
It is more than 50%? That opted in?
Depends on where people that draw their ICA card.
So the starting point is the ICA card, right? So you have all the people going into the brick and mortar store that we don't know, and then we start knowing the guys with the ICA card. That's the starting point of measuring the population, I guess.
Yes.
And then who of the population wants to have tailored services? That's the percentage we're talking about, right?
Yeah.
But is it? Someone just want to use the card to be able to pay with it, right? And they don't perhaps realize that they use it to personalize the experience.
No, but that's the point. So first you have the population with the ICA card, and then you ask the guys and girls with the ICA card, do you want to have a more tailored experience? That's how I understand it from my own personal
yes. And
so then you opt into the tailored part.
Is that true, or do you opt in for just having the card?
Good question. You opt into, of course, when you opt into the card, you opt into being an ICA customer, being a part of the loyalty program, and then you will get a lot of the. Now I'm thinking about the online tailoring. I'm not 100% sure on how much is affected when you opt in and out. You will get your
card. I haven't seen the question to opt in for a personalized experience, but
I know that when GDPR came into effect, there was a lot of stuff sent out and things like that.
Yeah.
And when all of the data protection texts and so on have evolved, not 100% sure how it is with like toggle buttons. Please turn off my sorting of the merchandise and so on. You do opt into getting those kind of personalized offers and things like that.
I'm trying to think like a consumer now, because this is one thing, but then I go into we have bought stuff on ICA online, right? So then I think you also register in the shop as well on top of your card, so you don't. So I can't remember how that was done.
So when you shop online at ICA, you have to select the store.
Yes.
And with that, and then it gets delivered either straight from that store or
that's exactly right.
Yeah.
I'm eager to go to the whole regulation topic, but perhaps we should table that for now and have that as a cliffhanger to move into the AI Act, etc.
But I kind of just want to explore a little bit more. Okay, so these are, of course, a lot of exciting use cases around the customer and how to create the ICA mission, both digital and online and all that. What other major areas is sort of, operational or logistical or stuff like that you have?
I think when we are approaching a little bit, it would be fun actually to discuss a little bit the retail in general, not only ICA, because I believe it's a paradigm shift, and all of those ICA, Coop, and everybody else that are also focusing, all of them on how to increase the customer experience in this. So let's take a general approach of the retail, how it needs to be changed instead of delving into a specific company.
No, but I think it's good. I think it's very exciting to understand on a concrete level what use cases is there. I think we can finish that, but then I think to understand where's the trend of retailing. That's that's a good one. Thank you. But just a couple of, we highlighted the customer part. I was just curious if you had any other major areas that you're working on.
So, one, for instance, is that ICA wants to reduce all of our emissions.
Exactly.
We had the goal to become climate neutral, which we did within our own operations. Now we set new climate goals on how little to affect, but also help our customers reduce their carbon footprint. And so with that comes a lot of finding where are normally we found a lot of things like where are we where do we have bottlenecks financially or delivery wise, and so that kind of normal operational efficiency that people have done for a long time. But now we're also looking at the climate efficiency and seeing things like measuring energy in the stores. Where are we consuming the most energy and so on, and how can we do we have stores, for instance, that use a lot of electricity for their fridges? Does it make sense to exchange those to something else, something newer? There are, those open fridges, you can have doors on them and so on. So there are a number of things you can do to just reduce that climate footprint. And I think that is something that that is upcoming, that is extremely interesting.
Can you use AI for that, you think, to try to optimize, how you operate the fridges or whatnot?
Definitely. I think, and depends on how far you drive the AI term, but I think you can definitely do that. You can find, first of all, find all of those discrepancies where you have high consumption in different parts, but also how you operate things, such as maybe temperature in the store going up and down during the night just because you don't have any people there.
So automatically regulate the temperature and power usage depending on the usage in some way.
Yeah, and a lot of those systems are already out in. A lot of modern buildings already have that. So, but you can definitely. This is a perfect example where you can put data into practice and really put it into operations.
I'm just saying it because sometimes if you have old type of ventilation systems, they are very reactive. So first, when you come into a room or a big meeting room which has been empty, it's very cold perhaps, and then you or warm rather, and then you come in and it becomes too warm and it starts to cool it down, and then it becomes too cool, and they have these horrible systems that actually react in a very reactive way rather than proactive way. So hopefully, if you have some proper AI in place, you could actually avoid this and predict that, I know beforehand that, at 8 o'clock, a lot of people will come into the store and we should start preparing for that in advance somehow, right?
Yeah, I very much agree. And I think a lot of, now that everyone is returning to their old offices, everyone is going to be very aware that the first few days, the air is not going to be great in those buildings. So.
Yeah, and one of my best friends, Christian Rasmussen at Grundfos, he's working at the Innovation Lab at Grundfos around cooling, the next generation AI-driven cooling. And I think this cooling topic must be quite major for a place like ICA. So I can just see how you can optimize the stores and how you can do many, many different things around the environment that will be more sustainable and even more cost effective. So,
and especially if you do that on ICA group level and then deploy that throughout the stores, I guess the impact of that.
I need to connect
really
you with
big.
Christian because it is really, because it's funny because I don't know so much about cooling, and then you have a friend who goes all into it in an innovation lab, and he starts giving you white papers on it, and it's just the whole world. And of course, when we talk cooling in the other parts of the world that is a little bit hotter, this is a huge problem or challenge that is actually quite a lot that can be improved.
Yeah, definitely.
Very, very interesting. And then I assume we have all the topics with logistics and transport, which is both from an efficiency point of view and of course ultimately sustainability topic as well.
Yeah.
Perhaps that's a good question to just ask. What are the main parts of the whole business of ICA that you try to work with from a more data science point of view? Logistics is one, the operations of stores, the customer experience, the whole life cycle of products, I guess, and minimizing waste, circular economy, and all these kind of things. What do you say that the major part of what you can use data science for in ICA Group is?
Ultimately, I would say very, very large part of the business you can use data science and make it data driven. Normally, most companies start somewhere, and we have had different. And if we also look across the whole ICA system, including the bank and including our pharmacy and so on, we do have parts that have worked with data a long time. Then you come into that whole machine learning journey to really drive those operational decisions even more. I would say, we started quite early within the customer loyalty side and have worked a lot with that. But I think, now that we have really begun on the journey on taking it wider into the company, we're not really leaving anyone untouched. We're trying to really spread that across. Then, of course, you need to look at where does it really make sense, right? In some parts, we are using more. We are using the full power of having data engineers, data scientists together with the business on our platforms and really spending a lot of time. In other parts, we're doing a lot of automation using automation platforms. Then we're not going as deep into that whole machine learning journey, but rather using things that get applied in those platforms, such as invoice scanning, for instance, or just automating things a person normally would do.
Yeah, but I think this is something that we have talked about a lot, and the way to look at any business. It's a little bit like to break down the core business into its core value chain and then do first principles on it. We have used the word first principles here with a lot of guests and talking about how to really break down the core business model in its core fundament and then rebuild it up maybe to a new business model, but in one way with data and AI in mind, So how can I understand my logistics, or sourcing part of my business chain? How can I understand my transportation part of my business? How can I understand the sorting and assortment part and inventory and turn the stock turnaround? How can I understand the customer experience, et cetera. So I think that's, of course, you can have data everywhere in these different topics. You were on to another question that sort of we can lead into here is like you started somewhere where, and typically maybe we have someone who is a little bit mature or you have started. And I can imagine that you, with your experience and how you now look at ICA, you can see maybe more use cases that we should really do this and this and this and that. But not always do we have maybe the knowledge and know-how what can be done with data and AI from experienced business people, but they are not data people. So have you thought anything about that, or where's the starting point when you get to that kind of topics? So
I mean, for us, becoming data-driven as a company is more than building use cases.
Yes.
So it's a whole mindset and a culture. So for me, that means that you have to spend time to do that kind of culture shift into becoming really data-driven. And in order to get there, you need to spend time with people, and you need to understand that at some point it's all down to the people. And then to make that kind of culture shift, increase their competence when it's needed, and so on. So I try to foster and work a lot with education. Just having that whenever you have a presentation, I always try to add some education into all of my presentations, even though it may be a reporting, maybe describing what we've done in a particular project. I always try to sneak some education in.
Smart, very good. I like it.
But we also do more efforts that are like focused efforts, creating learning sites, making short films where we describe some different topics that are really short, and people can just get a few minutes and then they can move on. As well as setting up like an analytics academy and having more focused training. But since when you want, training is one thing. Normally training is taking a particular role and lifting that competence to a place where you want it to be. And then that can be done by online or by seminars or whatever. But when you want to change a whole company, we cannot go out and train each and every employee and have them sit in a classroom because it doesn't make sense. So then we're looking at shifting the small things, shifting the mind little by little all the time in everyday life. And that means that the whole learning part must be easy. So it must become a part of the conversation. And then that means getting people to talk about data, talk about those use cases, talk about drive some champions that not only talk about their use cases, but also talk about their data and are passionate about their data and what they can do with that data. And when you can shift the companies, the talk, when you can shift the talk in the break room to becoming about data and what you can do with the data, then you really become data driven as a company.
It's so many different angles on this, because what we're talking about now is enterprise transformation and to some degree maybe a pivot. So I think we can come back a little bit about to where is retail going in a data and AI first society. If we take that sort of frame, where are we going with retail, both in terms of how we experience what we are doing in retail, but also what the retail organization is all about. What's the core organization? So what's your view on retail, data and AI? Taking the trajectory, where are we going if we get on this train a bit?
I think that, retail is definitely one of the industries where AI and that customer focus is really getting adopted. I think we are heading towards a very, very personalized experience. And it's quite interesting because some of the legislation that has been passed is kind of breaking that. For me, it's in a good way. If I look to myself as a consumer, that not all the companies cannot do whatever they like. They cannot track me without me knowing it. At least they're not allowed to. But and so on. But with that said, I think that with everything becoming, first of all, I think that retail will try to make everything, or should try to make everything easier and easier. So first of all, becoming a customer doesn't only mean that I get great offers. It should also be extremely easy to shop.
So what about the tech giant competition? Amazon coming to Sweden and starting to simplify the whole shopping experience more and more. Do you
The whole
fear,
logistics.
do you fear the tech giants coming into Sweden? And
I mean, obviously, you need to be aware of them. I'm not sure. For me, as an individual, I don't fear them as much. I think, I mean, they can definitely become a big competitor if they choose to really go ahead and try to become adopted in Sweden, which I don't think they've really tried.
No, they haven't started.
I mean,
strange launch in Sweden for sure.
Extremely strange launch. But I'm not as worried. I don't think. I think that the whole marketplace approach and so on is of course interesting. I think it will get some adoption, and we do have some companies that are working in that.
Isn't ICA a marketplace actually as well? Or?
Yes, yeah. in some manners, yes.
But is the retail ecosystem changing? So I mean, like, so I work a lot with truck manufacturing, and Scania is talking about the transport ecosystem, and are trying to understand what is our position and what is our role, and how do we, you know, are we the same animal, so to speak? Are our core business model the same? And probably not when we get into so, and what is the kind of question that ICAs and the Coops and the needs to consider in this? Are there any shifts here? Okay, we have global giants coming in, but are there fundamental shifts in the retail area?
I think the fundamental shift is if there is a fundamental shift, but I think what is becoming more and more important is the customer focus. What does the customer really need? How can we make the customers' lives really easy? And I mean, for ICA, the meal part, the whole food part, with ICA Sweden being the biggest part of the business, that is of course the center. But then we also have a lot of other things. We have, I mean, the ICA Bank, which is starting, or not starting, which is a big player on the banking side. We have Apotek Hjärtat, which is a large pharmacy chain in Sweden. And then we have, of course, the real estate to support all of that. But that whole ecosystem, and trying to make a customer feel that you're getting into the ICA ecosystem, where food is one thing, but you also get a number of other services like ICA, like an insurance and a bank and so on. And trying to just getting that whole feeling work as seamlessly as possible.
Because I think that fundamental strategy is something we also see in the banks. And the core topic is we have this customer base, and how can we evolve around this customer base that makes sense? You know, how can we maybe easier life as a core mission? And then basically, well, if you work with ICA, these things start to make sense together. I mean, like you see that in many industries, how you sort of trying to open up new revenue streams, so to speak, that makes sense for the customer. That is one part of how you understand, well, ICA went from a pure food store to banks and all that. So I think this is already happening. What about Amazon's? I mean, like, I think Amazon is very much driving the verticalization of the whole ecosystem. I mean, like from the store to the transport to the warehouse and all that. Yeah. I mean, like, I don't know ICA well enough to understand. Are you a fully integrated value chain today, or are you working with partners? You are fairly integrated.
I think we are fairly integrated. I mean, we work both.
Exactly.
Drive a lot of our own business and trucks and so on, but we also have partnerships.
Yes, you have both.
Yeah, so we have both, and we try to look at where it makes sense.
Yeah.
But continuing on similar topic, but perhaps moving into a slightly different topic, it would be fun to think about the Corona impact of ICA.
Yes.
And we can see that, for example, in education, we heard the Minister of Education in Sweden saying, you know, I think last year, saying these last 3 months of Corona has transformed, from a digitalization point of view, the educational system more than the last 5 years.
Yeah.
And I guess a big impact must have happened on the retail and ICA as well in terms of Corona and food deliveries and whatnot. What happened during Corona? Can you mention some aspects of what the impact was?
So Corona had, of course, a huge impact. And I mean, it was first part was when people started buying stuff that didn't make sense.
Oh yeah, all of the toilet paper and things like that. Harvesting that, yeah, that was weird. Never seen a store in ICA that was out of the toilet papers.
It was extremely weird. And the toilet paper manufacturers basically went out and said, well, I mean, we can't make more right now. It's coming. But
it's fun. It's so funny. Oh, we're going to die. What do I need? I really need toilet paper.
But then after, I mean, when the first chaos kind of settled down, I mean, the whole online of food, that has gotten a really, really good push during the
Then you
pandemic.
couldn't even deliver stuff fast enough to homes, right? Or?
Yes, and I mean, I think that's an interesting part to really be aware of. It's not just scaling your servers for your website. You also need to be able to drive the truck out to the to the homes.
Exactly. The whole value chain needs to then shift to another fundamental core model.
Yep.
And how much, of course, because this is interesting that there's this timing. We want to do things. We want to push the envelope, but we kind of need to have the market window together with the customer. So then when the customer is not willing to change their behaviors, it doesn't happen. But then we have triggers like Corona, and now we have changed patterns and we have found new patterns that probably won't go back. I have a good example.
Well, ask him. I mean, do you think we will come back to the traditional behavior and going to the stores at the same way as we did before Corona, or will it actually continue have some kind of persistent change?
It will definitely be a persistent change. I mean, the whole online gaining market share.
Yeah,
that I'm 100% confident in.
Mm.
I don't see the online going down now that we're starting to open up the society. I really don't think that will happen now, because people have started to really get that sense of, well, it's quite easy to just buy online.
It's quite convenient, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And I just go there and pick it up. So I didn't get it first, but now when I've done it 5 times, wow, this is quite nice.
Yeah. So I think that I think it will be a persistent change. What I think will be very interesting to understand, that I'm not myself sure where it will head, is what do you buy online versus what do you buy in the store?
Right.
Mm-hmm.
That part is going to be very interesting to follow. How does how do the consumers change their behavior now that they're starting to work and so on?
Do you think you will have, Amazon has what they call predictive shopping, basically saying they will deliver stuff to your door even though you haven't ordered it. Just because you're out of fruits, out of toilet paper, out of whatever, they know that you normally buy this X times per month, so they simply deliver it, and you have the freedom to freely return it. But as long as they can predict it to a certain threshold, like 60% of the time, they still make money by simply sending it to you automatically. Do you think that will happen for ICA at some point?
I actually haven't thought about it. It is an interesting topic. I myself would like to have, like, how do you put it? A subscription on my gray shopping.
Yeah.
I mean, the things
the gray shopping proactive, I don't think it's so far away. I really don't think it's that far away.
No, I mean,
as long as it's a little bit like, we kind of know that you are really keen for this to the right price. We think we have the right price for you right now. Keep it or send it back.
Yeah.
I think that would work.
Yeah,
personally,
definitely.
Mm-hmm. What do you think about personalized pricing? Saying that a certain person, because of whatever kind of demographics or whatnot or behavior, they get a different price online when they buy stuff.
That is an interesting topic. I haven't really thought about it. I mean, you kind of get that from, I mean, looking at banks and insurance and so on. There, it's more mainstream.
It is quite mainstream.
Especially on the insurance side. I mean, they do a risk. You're worth the risk assessment. You're worth this much, and then you get this premium. When it comes to groceries and things like that, it's.
But don't they have it already? So if you're a loyal customer, don't you have like a points that you collect?
Yeah, points and kickback, which is a little bit like you get rewarded for being loyal.
And if you have like a old like a nick next to expiry date food, don't you change the pricing as well?
Yes, but not depending on who you are as a customer.
Exactly. But I think it's we are almost there. Just basically tweak a little bit.
Tweak a little bit.
The reason I ask it, I remember this is like 6-7 years ago. I went to.
Or another. So if the person is buying in store or online, is it a different price?
Depends on the store, I would say.
Yeah, so we are getting there. It just needs to be systemized correctly, right?
Yes, but you also need to set the expectation around it for the customer, because that needs to be it needs to be very clear for the customer that this is happening. Because if this is one of the parts where you need to really inform your customers. We are doing this. This is how it will be affected. Otherwise, it will be a lot of. Yeah,
I think it can be a big backlash. I just want to share a small anecdote. And I went to this kind of recommender system conference 7 years ago. 7-8 years ago, long time ago. I'm too old. Anyway, there was this PhD student, and he was presenting his awesome PhD thesis about personalized pricing and how you can optimize the shop by having this person is able to pay this much and this one not so much, and by finding the right price you can optimize the total revenues so much. And he was so proud of it. And then after his presentation, a senior data scientist from Amazon stood up and he said, this is completely useless. We would never ever use this in Amazon. And he said basically the reason for that was that the number one metric for them is the user experience. And if anyone thinks that I have to pay more for their meal cart than Henrik has, I will be angry. Why do I have to pay more? It's a discrimination, more or less. And it's a very sensitive topic, I think, unless you have a good motivation for why someone should pay more than the other person in some way, right?
And just getting that feeling that I might be paying more than someone else. I mean,
very sensitive topic, but who knows what the future has in store, so to speak.
Are we ready for a new topic?
Yeah, I think so.
I think we are. We were discussing before we started here. You were mentioning a topic that I want you to elaborate on. You call it like the full spectra. To understand the full spectra, and how do you holistically build a machinery that all the pieces fits together. So that was a bad framing. Why don't you frame your pet peeve?
Yeah. So my pet peeve, if you will, is around something I call like an analytical framework, where which does not only contain the code frameworks you need to do data ingestion, data transformation, or machine learning models and so on, but rather having that whole picture. What are the things you need to put in place? If you do everything, you're going to get like a grid of things you need to put in place, with everything from top, where you have your business strategy, your data strategy, your analytics strategy. You have how you work with data products, how you create them, how you decommission them, how you evolve them, how you organize, to things around data governance. How do you work with that? How do you work with information ownership, data protection tech, and so on, down to data platforms and other analytical platforms, as well as analytical processes. How do you work with self-service? How do you work with machine learning? How do you run those use cases? And having that kind of framework that is end-to-end, where you can pick pieces and have that whole holistic viewpoint. Because if you get the full map and say, these are the things you should look at from the start, and then being able to pick out the pieces and being able to actually apply that and start working with that is something that I rarely see. And it's something that I see a lot of pieces of that puzzle from different companies, from different vendors and so on. But I would like to see more of that full scale analytical framework.
But you're actually talking about my pet peeve. It's interesting. And it's a really interesting topic, but it's also a really difficult topic, because typically when you do something holistically, well, McKinsey is doing that and it doesn't really fly because it's so high fly, so you can't really pick it apart. So let's pick apart the problem that you are thinking about, that you are solving with this. How do you see, why do you need that? How would that help you? Why is this something you think you need?
So I think that when you don't have the whole view, you're going to run, everything becomes an investigation.
Yeah.
And in some cases, this is perfectly fine. I mean, especially if you're starting out small and trying to do things, you're probably just going to need a very small thing. But if you aren't aware of, for instance, all of the GDPR measures you need to take, and those pop up late, and you try to add them as an duct tape on it afterwards, it's going to be extremely hard. It's not going to work well. Whereas if you've taken that into account from the start and have really identified your customer information, you know what you do with it, and that can be as easy as documenting it on a wiki. But just having that when you think about when you work with it, so you know that I need to be able to sort out right to be forgotten. I need to be able to run data retention and so on. When I start out, it becomes so much easier to just build things the right way.
Anders, I know you did a topic similar in AI Sweden where you did the map. What was your idea with doing the map? Please explain what I'm talking about and how it relates, if it relates to this topic, because I think it does in some ways.
It is connected partly, but it's trying to have the more holistic view what it really means to try to have a successful AI use case that has some kind of business value. And so many people focus so much on the data itself or the model itself or the code itself, but there is so much more than just having that. There can be legal issues, as you mentioned, and there can be, how do you really productionize it properly, but not the least, how do you really transform the mindset of the business as well, and how you build knowledge of the people to be able to use it or understand the value of it. And trying to have this kind of bigger holistic view is something I think very few companies and people do understand. So I really like what you say about the framework. The question or the problem that I see is really, how do you communicate that? How do you get people to understand that? Even if you have it in your head, potentially you can write it down in a wiki, but who will actually read that? I mean, not everyone would read the wiki. And that is a hard question for me. Do you have any thoughts about, if you have designed the perfect framework, how do you get that into the heads of the other people?
And I think that different people are going to read different parts of that framework. And what I think is, but it is an extremely important topic, just having that whole communication part. Because you can, as you say, you can write down the perfect framework. If no one reads it, then it's worthless. If no one understands it, it's also worthless.
Right.
So you really need to think about, how do I communicate? Who do I communicate to? And what level do you need to communicate on? And I think it is so worth the time, just taking that extra day to make some easy either presentations. I recently did an internal film of a few minutes just saying, what is a data platform? What is data management? What is a visualization environment? Doing those kind of things where it becomes easily accessible. It's really worth it because it makes it just so much easier to communicate. And I think that the whole communication side of it is not to be underestimated. Yeah. You need to spend a lot of time there.
I'm biting my tongue now, Anders. You always say you're biting your tongue.
Yes.
Because you're sitting talking about what I have on my hat.
Yeah.
What do you have on your hat for people that don't see it?
So I have a hat which says airplane that I'm wearing every time in this podcast. And what the hell is this airplane? All right. And very simply put, we are trying to crowdsource and open source peer-to-peer to solve that topic, because we think it's that big. So we need to lay a puzzle together. And the way we have talked about this problem is extremely similar to what you have said, the same, but we are adding another angle to it. That one part of the problem is that we have people with different roles. If you're a business solution owner, the business guys, they define how they understand a use case or what they need to do in their way. And then you go to the data scientist who have their understanding for a use case lifecycle. Data engineer, something else. Software engineer, something else. And we simply miss this framework or common lingo, how we can get this faster. And what we have done very, very concretely is very similar to a little bit what you have done, but we have put the core quanta around the use case lifecycle and then looked at the core fundamental roles to put AI in production, the data engineer, the data scientist, and stuff like this. And then basically trying to understand, what are we doing in the ideation phase? What are we doing? Exactly like, oops, we shouldn't have the GDPR topic pop up in the ramp up stage. It come early. So basically, this is a humongous puzzle to put together, right? But some crazy people are trying to get it done. And basically, we have some crazy universities that are trying to work on this topic from, so we have then within the framework defined, who is the airplane navigator, stuff like this, who's understanding the whole thing. And then so I'm not biting my tongue anymore.
That's awesome.
But I think this is really important problem. My take, we have an orchestration problem to take data and AI into production. The number one problem is orchestration. That's why we don't have speed.
Let me, even though I also done similar things, say that, perhaps we can take another approach. And it will be fun to hear what you think about this, Olof. But one thing we did in AI Agenda for Sweden was that, it's impossible to really describe every aspect of how you build an AI-enabled system. And to try to have a single overview of everything that everyone needs to understand, and everyone can't understand everything. No. It's not possible. No. So what do you do? So I think a potential other solution to it could be to instead say, forget that. What I instead do is I have a library of use cases. And I say, here we built a system or a use case that handled the logistics of milk carts to an ICA store. And this is what we did. These are the people that did it. And we can give a quick overview, but very, very brief. And the only thing that if someone recognizes and say, I have a similar use case, what they should do is really contact these people or read more information about that. Because usually the devil's in the details. And it's usually, if you just hear the very brief overview of something, it always sounds nice. But if you don't have the details, you usually fail if you try to copy it. Would you agree with that?
Yeah. I mean, the details are very important. I think also when we do, the whole library part is extremely interesting because I think that's one of the part that a lot of people don't know what can be done. Or what
exactly
you can be inspired then to
the whole idea of how to get started. I don't even know what my problem could be or inspired.
Yeah. Cool. They're moving to another topic there because time is flying away.
Time is flying.
Yeah. And I think this is actually one of your favorite topics as well. So we're speaking about a number of use cases, but how do you truly find a good use case to work with? And how do you find a use case that actually do provide business value in some way? Let's say you have 10 different use cases that you have identified in some way. How do you select which one to start with? Or do you start with many of them? Or what's your thinking there? How do you select which one which ones to start with?
So there's quite an easy and a traditional way of looking at it, and it's kind of looking at the business value versus feasibility matrix. Mm-hmm. I think that has been used a lot of times in so many different areas, but it's extremely relevant here as well. It's just what goes into that, into the feasibility, for instance, that changes. when it comes to the business value, it's going to be hard to predict your value out of an analytics case or a machine learning case normally.
Before you just skip over the whole business value versus feasibility, if you were to still try to estimate that for a use case, how do you really go about doing that? How do you know the business value of a use case before you have it? Or how do you actually practically do it if you were to sit down?
One part is just estimating it. Another is measuring it. And I think that the whole A/B testing is an area to really adopt and is very important. But if you were to estimate it, you have to look at the business problem. What is it that we're trying to solve? Is it, and then it can't just be on we want higher customer loyalty. I mean, you need to look at, okay, what are we trying to solve in this case? Are we trying to get the trucks to drive a shorter route to the stores, for instance? And so kind of the traveling salesman problem.
Exactly.
And then
we need a quantum computer to do that. Sorry, continue.
And then you can start looking, okay, how much do we spend today? So basically, how much is the whole mass that you can optimize? It's never going to be zero, but how much is the whole mass? And then try to look at doing some form of estimate. Normally, being an estimate,
but
you can either do it manually,
more,
but you could also do a POC and actually try to dump data in, try to create a model. Quick and easy.
Speaking very practically about this, because business value, some people are good at estimating that. Some people may not be good at estimating feasibility, for example, especially if it's a bit more complicated kind of AI use case that business people may not have any clue if they think is feasible or not. They think, in many cases, I would say that AI is some kind of magic box, so just put some data into it and it will work, right?
And I think that's where in order to come up with, say, a one slider where you describe a particular use case with benefits, with cost, and with feasibility and so on, in order to get there, you need to actually work together. And you need to have that whole discussion it cannot be the business coming up with everything. It cannot be the data science team.
No.
So you really need to work together. You need to have that whole ideation process and work through what are we actually going to do on a high level, of course. But it's not just,
the business cannot do it on their 5%. Own. And the data scientist or the AI person cannot do it their own. They need to have a common approach on how they ideate, design thinking, methodology, whatever. I think
common, or should it be combined?
No, what I mean with this, this is T-shaped or something like this, that you have your discipline where you are strong in, but we need to come together to understand we have a fundamental problem. The fundamental problem is how can we reduce traveling salesmen. I mean, it needs to start somewhere with a very concrete understanding of a problem. I think to say, as you said, we want better customer loyalty, it's not concrete enough. Okay, what is it exactly that you're trying to fix as a problem? Number one, get that sharp. But then you need to have those people with the different disciplines in the same room to co-create on how that could work. And then that's what I think is maybe combine is a better word, because we need to have a methodology to come up with it together. But it's not that we come there with different skills that extrapolate on each other in some ways. I think how you do that is quite important.
What do you think, Olof, about this? Because some people claim that the only type of use cases you should focus on is what the business think it needs to have. But the problem potentially with that is it's hard for business people to understand what technology can do. So if you just do what the business potentially people are thinking, you could throw a Henry Ford quote on this and say, if you just want to have a faster horse, we would just have a faster horse and not a car. Yeah. How do we avoid that kind of incremental development problem where you just continue working as you do, and missing out potentially on some big transformation that you can make?
And I think it's extremely important to not, because the business are great at doing the business.
Yeah.
They are doing. But when you bring business and tech together, that is when you can really find the sweet spots where you should spend your time and money.
I fully agree with that.
And it comes from two parts. One is that business needs to start learning more tech, but above all, they need to start wanting to work together with tech.
Good.
And I think that whole wanting to work with each other is really the key in all of it. At the same time, I think that the tech side should drive more and come up with more suggestions and talk to the business and say, maybe we can do this and this and this. And that requires them to take an interest in the business.
Oh.
And understanding what the business actually needs. And that's kind of the culture shift you need to get to. The second part is just creating that arena where they can work together, creating ideation forums, having space for doing business innovation, and so on. But I think having that whole use case forum where you have a business over here deciding what to do, and then that gets to some organization that writes one sliders that goes to someone that should deliver it.
It will never work.
It will never work.
It will never work. But I think here, one joke to say here, we want that business arena, but the problem is now we get to this business arena, and let's say we have a doctor's type problem, then we can make a joke out of it. Here we have an arena where one guy speaks Python and the other guy speaks Latin, and they don't understand each other. So this is where sort of the common framework, which is down to lingo and how we go about it, so we can be trained in how the arena works. I bring my Latin, I bring my Python, and we talk English together. Yeah. And we have a language of English, so we can have this arena to work. Then you can code in Latin, and I can sell in, I can be a doctor in, Do you see what I mean, right? Yeah. So this linguistical problem of translating from business to analytics and data is huge, right? So the arena has to have a lingo with it. I think something like this. I think this is hard stuff. Good stuff.
Should we?
We should move on.
Yeah.
Time is flying.
Yeah.
Do you want to take a topic? I want to go a little bit more philosophical.
Okay, one small, very easy topic just to answer then. No, but anyway, to build teams and to have the proper skills in a team, and you have said a number of different teams. It can be the line organization or the main team or the virtual teams. Perhaps we should focus on the virtual teams for now. And also from a recruiting point of view, what type of people should you recruit to have the optimal kind of mix or set of skills in a virtual team? What's your thinking there?
So, for me, it's let's disregard whether or not it's a virtual team or an organizational team and so on. What you need to look at, what do you need to perform to deliver an end-to-end use case? First of all, you need to have business people in there. You need to have that the people that are going to develop the actual business. So you need those business experts in there. You need to have the analytics people in there. Depending on what you want to achieve, you need data scientists, analysts, dashboard creators. You need people to make sure that the data is where it should be in the right manner. So you need data engineers. Very often you need ML engineers as well to really support the data scientists and make everything work together. You need some form of platform skills in the team, if you have that centralized or in the actual team or not, that's depending on your organization, but you need that skill in there to add new services, to make things go smoother. Then you need someone that knows the data, knows what is where Where does the data come from? How is it defined?
How is it modeled? Blah blah blah.
Yeah, how is it modeled? How is it characterized? What's the quality? Exactly, and so on. And also someone that knows the data governance around it. So knows the things. Is this sensitive data? Is this not sensitive? What kind of protection do we need to put on the data, and so on.
And okay, so I'm trying to finish this up, so we have some time for philosophical topics as well. But you mentioned at least one dimension to think of when constructing or creating team, and that could be skills. What type of skills should you have? But it can be many other dimensions. So it could be like level of seniority, it could be gender, it could be age, etc. Do you have any thoughts about that? What's the proper mix of people in terms of seniority, age, gender, etc.?
I think having a fully junior team is going to be hard.
Yeah.
They will need direction. I think it's good to have a mix of senior and junior people.
Do you have a favorite ratio between a senior person and a junior people?
Maybe 1 to 2, something like that.
Oh, that's high.
Depends on your level of seniority as well, I would say, and your level of juniority.
Yeah.
So, and with that said, I think that just counting up the skills means that you're not going to have 10 data engineers in a team. Which means that if you're going to have a mix, you need to have that ratio can't be it can't be 1 to 10, because then the team all of a sudden is huge. In some sense, it can be enough to have a senior data scientist working with junior data engineers, as long as they know more on the technical side. Those kind of paths all often go together in some sense. When it comes to diversity, I think that diverse teams can be easy to put together a team where everyone is the same, and it's going to be great for like a week. But I think the long-term efficiency of that team is not going to be as good as if you create a diverse team. And I think you can really achieve more with diverse teams than you do with teams where everyone is the same, because you're going to have different viewpoints, you're going to have different experiences, you're going to be able to take things a lot further, and you may end up clashing in the start, and you have to do that whole group level development over time. But in the end, when you come out the other side, it's going to be so much better if you have a diverse team.
I think we could speak forever about this, but perhaps we should move into the more philosophical. Do you want to take it?
It's a philosophical question or like a macro question. It can be both, but the entry point is this. On Data Innovation Summit 2021 on 14th and 15th October here in Stockholm, the theme is AI transformation. So I would like to explore what is AI transformation from the highest macro perspective, starting there. What does it mean to society, and almost philosophically, what is AI transformation? What do we mean with that? What is our take on this if we start big?
And I think it's of course an extremely exciting topic, yes. I would say. For me, it is bringing AI into everyday life and making everyday life easier with the use of machine learning and AI. Depending on how far we want to take the whole AI topic, we can increase productivity without tearing down people's health, if I put it like that. And I think that should be the aim of AI and machine learning, is to make every day a bit easier for everyone. So better for the public good, if I put it like that. And But in order to get there, we need to start getting it into everyday life, because when we do that, people will start to trust it. They will understand. They will not see it as a vague threat on the horizon and start seeing it as, oh, it's this easier shopping experience at Decathlon.
But I want to explore why we call it a transformation, or if it's some sort of paradigm shift or a pivot. And let me frame my thinking a little bit like this, that we are coming from an industrial era. We have been chasing efficiencies and automation of muscle power, so to speak. And now we're moving into some sort of society where we have a data and AI first approach. And all of a sudden we have a few tech giants who actually they're working on a different macro life cycle. If you know the term S curve, or you know how you draw up the curve. I mean, like the old we are proud analog people on the maturity of one curve, and here we have the real tech giants, the most valuable companies in the world. There are even before the pioneering station into the growth stage of another curve. So they are literally moving with a data and AI first mindset. And I think we are now talking about the fundamental shift in how we organize, how we structure things, first principles ideas on everything. We are all data companies, all AI companies. I mean, like, yeah, for me, this is, I don't know, transformation is too light. It's a pivot of your fundamental approach to operations, organization, business.
And that I very much agree with. I think that all companies will have to be data and AI companies, or they will probably go extinct.
Do we think that? I mean, like, because I'm just following the trajectory, and I think it's unavoidable.
I think it depends on what level we're talking. I don't think the local pizza bakery is going to be extinct if they don't put AI in their pizza production.
Don't be too sure about it.
It's a time horizon thing, maybe.
I actually had a recent discussion about that, and someone said, yeah, sure, the tech companies and Spotify, etc., they need AI, but what about the hairdresser? They couldn't care less about digital transformation or AI-driven, companies. And someone said, are you sure? And they started to rank up like 10 different use cases, and for a hairdresser, saying, if you don't do this, someone else will do that, and you will be left behind. I think, may not be that obvious, but it can be surprisingly impactful, I think, even for everyday kind of roles.
Because we are talking now like we need to find this arena, we were joking Latin versus Python, and then we need to talk English. My philosophical view on this is that all companies, none will be talking Python, none will be talking English. We will all live in the middle of the Venn diagram. Our core business will happen in the middle of the Venn diagram between whatever domain we're in and data and AI. So this whole sort of paradigm of IT supply and IT demand will disappear. This is my take on if I just follow the trajectory.
I don't think people have to think about it. It's just that AI will be a natural component of everything you do. It's just, you don't has to be an expert in it in any way. It's just that, when you put your business online, of course there will be a recommender system in place. And of course you will have some kind of optimization in how you get your products in place, but you don't build it yourself. It's just that it's a natural component of every part of your business.
And what does that mean for the companies who are not, what is the transition that will happen for all businesses to be part of that, to be competitive? They need to.
I think actually you phrase it really well, Olof. It simply will make it easier for everyone. They don't have to do all the horrible, boring manual steps that they otherwise have to do. And it simply works. And it simply, you do what you should do, and the rest is automated and optimized for you and recommended for you, or completely automated in some way. I think, what you actually said and the mission of ICA, I think, is surprisingly apt in that way. You should make it simpler for people.
Yeah, and I think, just adopting that kind of mindset as a company and realizing the fact that AI will be in the middle of everything we do, doesn't mean that everyone needs to be Spotify or Amazon and needs to have a an army of data engineers and data scientists, but rather that they use the platforms out there. I mean, if we take the pizza place, I mean, most of them today have a website where you can order stuff. A lot of them actually deliver home using other partners.
Services.
Exactly. So which are then AI driven to optimize logistics and so on. So I think not every company needs to be a tech building company. But all companies need to be tech companies.
So all companies will need to be tech savvy to understand what they need and how to use it.
Or even, it could actually be easier. I'm not. Should I go there?
Yeah, go there. Please go there.
I mean, if my mom, for example, she's a nurse or she's retired right now, but still, she hated the digitalization of journal systems, because before they could simply write with pen and paper on some kind of piece, the journal, and that was it. Then she had to move into these horrible digital systems and these kind of forms, and they were so immature, and you couldn't change anything, and there were bugs in them, and
you had to write it twice or 4 times the same shit.
Exactly, and that was very annoying. And she hated digitalization. I think what will happen, and I think a lot of people have a confusion here, thinking that AI will increase the level of difficulty it will be working with machines, but that will be the exact opposite, I think.
Yes, I think so.
It will be just easier to work together with machines. If it is a journal system or a car, it doesn't really matter. You can simply speak to them, or they know what you want in advance, so they simply recommend you and ignore all the annoying stuff, and it will simply make it easier once again, right, to do stuff.
Yeah. And right? Just to finish off this topic now, and the next question, the companies who are not sort of with a proud analog history, I think ICA is a really great example of a very, very good company. How much do we need to chase it, or will it just happen? I mean, we've been talking about the AI divide in terms of some few tech giants really moving ahead of the game. They're on a different curve, as we said. And I feel scared anytime I feel a central of power on anything where very, very few is doing something no one else can do. So I kind of is pushing the hypothesis that the normal companies should definitely chase it hard. Not maybe more techy than they should expect, but I'm just scared if we are not all chasing it right now. How do we should we just wait for it? It will be easier. Amazon will do it for us.
And to be fair, I think a lot of companies out there are chasing it.
I think so too.
And but I think it rightly so. I think that a lot of it takes time and effort, and nothing takes more effort than change.
Good one.
So you need, when you decide to change, that actually takes effort. It's not going to happen. A company doesn't become data-driven because you build a few use cases.
No.
It becomes data-driven when you start learning about it and start learning about data and start learning and bringing that whole into your company culture. And with that said, yes, I think you need to do it as an active effort as a company.
But I think my core question is, do we all need to have it like a pervasive idea that this is so important, it is top of the agenda, or can we use to ride along and use the services that come out? I am kind of in the corner that thinks we need to chase it and we need to make it pervasive in our normal analog companies, simply to put the balance to some few that is doing it today. But I don't know. What do we think?
I think that it's worth chasing. I mean, it depends on how far you pull it. I mean, you still need to have that whole, why are we here? What's our purpose as a company? Is our purpose to sell as much food as possible, or is it to make our customers' lives a little bit easier? And together with that, I think that you need to understand that in our customers' lives are being made easier and easier and easier by the tech giants, which means that in order to keep up, we need to run.
I just said, damn it, ICA has the most AI-ready payoff make life easier?
I mean, mission or what?
No, but like the mission is sort of geared to, we need to do AI to make things easier. I mean, like if we talk about AI to simplify, make things easier, and make more convenient recommendations and all that, if you really dig down what makes things easier, it's a lot of data in there.
If I were to be a bit argumentative here, then potentially easier is not always good. I think sometimes you need some kind of challenge, etc. The easiest way would be, just lie in the bed and everything is fixed for you. That would not be a happy life. I think if we make the life happier, I think that could be a potentially better slogan. I don't know.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, I agree.
I will do a quick one on one of our sort of favorite philosophical topics, and is to take a stab at the understanding of artificial general intelligence and singularity. And do you have any ideas or thinking or thoughts? Or have you ever reflected on what happens when this goes the whole way, so to speak?
So I've had some, of course, some reflections on my own. It's not something I lie sleepless at night over. I mean, it's really, really interesting, right? Now writing programs, where does it all end? How far can we really take that? It's worth being careful about, I would say, and really setting the right boundaries for it, or perhaps not boundaries, but as much as direction.
Direction is a good word.
So with that said, I think that a lot of what we are doing today we will not be doing in the end. I mean,
the way we go about life, you mean, or the chores we have and the tasks we do?
Definitely a lot of the work tasks we do today. I don't think we're going to do that in 100 years.
No.
And I'm not sure 100 years is the right time span, considering the speed that everything is picking up. But without being that kind of thinking on what will happen in 10 years, but what will happen long term, then I think the majority of what we do in our professional lives today, we're not going to be doing. I mean, building systems, for instance. I mean, having people that are sitting and coding when we can
give an instruction to someone.
We can speak English to the machines rather than speaking Python.
Exactly.
Have you seen the OpenAI's codex? You can just tell it to write the program, and it writes it for you. Could be the future. I think it will take some time, but still, it's an interesting one. Right. But if you were to just differentiate like three different terms here, you spoke about singularity, you spoke about AGI, artificial general intelligence, and you can also speak about human level intelligence. And just to give at least my first view of that, because I think they are three different things.
Yep.
So human level intelligence means basically that AI has catched up with what the human type of brain can do. Artificial general intelligence is much, much more than that. If you think about it, human brain and humans are incredibly stupid. You can't even multiply two large integers, or you can't even remember more than 2-3 things at a time in your head. But the machine can do so much more. So it can be easily hypothesized that AGI can be extremely much more super intelligent level than humans ever could. And then you have singularity, which is basically a point in time where you lose control, where I don't want to say the term matrix, but at some point there will be something that causes a problem that we can't stop.
So I was actually asking, singularity, does that mean when we lose control, or what does it mean when when they think for themselves, or we can't? Someone said it like when you can't push the button and turn it off. Is that the definition we're talking about for singularity?
It's my view, at least. I'm not sure if it's the definition of it.
Yeah. So what's your view on singularity? Because I've tried to. Someone asked me to explain this in a pod recently, and I tried. Yeah. And I was like, I'm just gonna kill me now because I'm fluffing it. I don't know. But I explain it more like when we reach the point that they think for themselves. But that is.
I think. I mean,
but it's too light, right? You don't like that.
Like it.
I think the singularity is when we reach the point where we cannot no longer understand. For me, it's more when we can't understand it anymore. I mean, it's one thing to lose control, but we can lose control over the internet today.
But when we have had this conversation here, it's been like you can't really turn it off anymore. It has taken a life on its own.
Just to give a concrete example, then, I mean, singularity can happen in a very narrow way. It can be that someone actually builds a drone that is autonomous, and they have a single idiotic mission, which is kill as many humans as possible. And they go rogue, do that. You have lost control, and you can't control it even more. And potentially, they forgot to build in a safe or some kind of safe hack, so you can turn it off. Fail safe. Thank you. Or it can be something that go rogue on the stock market or something, and you can't turn it off. And that can actually happen very, very quickly.
But could you use the word singularity, narrow singularity?
I think so.
Did you invent it right now, Anders? Narrow singularity. I think you did.
Maybe. I was thinking about narrow consciousness, and I just extrapolated from that.
I saw what you did.
But yeah, so basically losing control in that sense is what I meant. And you can think, Matrix or the Terminator as well, and Terminator having machines. Robotics, of course, is very, very far behind and probably 50 at least years off. But you can go rogue without having robotics. You can go rogue with just software. And that can happen really, really quickly.
But you put some sort of out of control in the definition of singularity.
Yeah.
That's what you are.
Yes, and then it can be a narrow and general one. If a general happens, it basically means they can,
I need to read all definition of singularity and see if I can.
But I don't think I do it in the same way as Wikipedia or someone does it.
I don't think you do.
At some point, if they're completely independent of humans and can continue to work, that would be the general type of singularity. But that's another thing.
Yeah. And can continue to evolve without our
completely independent of us.
This is it. But we've had a little bit more. I would say doomsday.
I think there are narrow singularities, and I think there is a general one.
And I think you just invented something that we haven't heard before, and I love it.
Okay. Yeah, maybe.
You heard it here first. Okay, I think.
Olof, you're not scared about the singularity then, or?
No, not really.
Good.
Do you have a number? Time when
the singularity will happen.
Yeah, we have a bet.
You haven't.
I'm joking.
No,
we don't have a bet.
Well, it depends on how you define it.
But somewhere what we talked about right now, I guess.
Yeah, kind of losing control when we stop understanding and it starts to evolve by itself, and we can't really stop that evolution. 2050.
This. Close. What's the curse trial number? 29.
That's 2029. But 2050 is interesting because that's the RoboCup definition of when the human champions in soccer will beat the robotics champion in soccer. And that means that both the AI, the software part, and the robotics has been, improved so much it actually can overtake a human. So that's actually their definition.
Vice versa.
Yeah, vice versa. The robotics team beats the humans.
Oh, yeah. Yes. Did I say vice? The opposite? Oh. Okay. Yeah, of course.
2050, yeah.
If you include robotics, I would agree. If you exclude robotics, I would say it happens much faster.
Yeah, I think losing control in narrow areas that will happen a lot faster.
Yeah.
That I'm positive about. And as long as we add the whole intelligence part about it, is that we lose control over an intelligence that has a narrow band of control. Yeah, that's a lot sooner. Losing control over a machine learning algorithm so that it destroys something that probably happened yesterday.
Exactly. Good point. Awesome.
Very good. I think we are running into the last type of questions. And what is next in your life? What is on the agenda next for you?
I mean, aside from just the normal kind of life with 3 kids, 1 dog, and I think that what is next for me when it comes to, it's of course the Data Innovation Summit coming up in a couple of weeks. And I'm working on the kind of analytic framework and so on. So
we need to talk after work.
Yeah, and that is something that I'm personally working on. And then, I mean, as a company, we're doing so many things right now, and the whole part of that whole data-driven transformation.
Anything we will see as consumers around the corner that you can give us a small scoop? Just a hint.
Oh, now I have to think about the use. I mean, a lot of our use cases you will, as a consumer, see as incremental things.
Yes,
not a huge things. We do have some unmanned stores already today. You will probably see improvement in that area, I would say.
Unmanned stores, improvement in that area sounds very cool. Last question. Do you have anyone you would like to recommend to join this podcast?
Yeah, I think, I mean, I have several people. It depends on the area. I have my colleague Olof Ottosson.
Ola, yes.
He's a good one to have on there. I have a friend that I've worked on and off with over the years, Niklas Cederberg, when we talk about scaling organizations and teams.
Where is he now?
HM.
He's HM, yeah, right. Yes. Good ideas. Very good. So I think thank you very much for. We had the chance to interrogate you at some point. It felt like sorry for that.
Having me. I mean, these are my favorite topics.
We all want to understand how do they do it? How do they do it? You know. Thank you for that. Thank you for that. So with that, I think.
Thank you very much, Olof, and let's start the after work.
That's what happens now. Take care.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you.